Carrying on with the march theme, we realized that as a result of the marching in St. Augustine, that put a lot of pressure on the Congress, and they passed the '64 Civil Rights Act, which had two main features. One was public accommodations. It required the integration of restaurants, hotels, motels. It was a great accomplishment. It was not the most important issue because a lot of black folks, especially in the South, didn't have the money to go to motels and restaurants. And, Title VII of the Act covered equal employment. Now that was an important session. It required equality of employment and no discrimination in jobs and among unions and so on. And we brought some of the first Title VII cases in Bogalusa, Louisiana, where they had a big Crown Zellerbach plant that had segregated unions, segregated everything, and you had two lines of employment. You know, you started here as a black person, and you worked up here as a white person. You could go up there, and we successfully sued that big plant. But what was missing was voting rights. There were very few registered voters in the South, not because they didn't want to, but they weren't allowed to register. They were given these tests to interpret the Constitution, various sections of the Constitution, the state Constitution, which had, I couldn't interpret some of them, and they expected people just to walk in and be able to say what this meant. And they had the poll tax as well. And then we had violence. Some of my clients, Fannie Lou Hamer, you may have heard of, a marvelous leader in Mississippi Delta from Louisville. She was beaten up so badly when she tried to register to vote that she became crippled for the rest of her life. She had a drag in one leg behind her. A woman by the name of Maggie Gordon went to register to vote in Holmes County, Mississippi, got beat up by the Highway Patrol, and so on. So we wanted to work on getting Congress to pass a pending bit of legislation called the Voting Rights Act. The best way to do that was another march, and that resulted in the Selma March. Dr. King, again, was involved. I was part of the team of lawyers that had to bring a lawsuit because the governor, the distinguished governor of Alabama, George Wallace, a great American. Sit for a second, excuse me. So we began to plan this march, and but we couldn't get permission from the state. George Wallace said if they march, we'll arrest them. We won't protect them from the white onlookers who crowd the highways. But we could start anyway, and John Lewis, Dr. King wasn't there for that particular weekend. John Lewis led the march to get out of Selma and to get on the highway. You have to cross a bridge over this small river. We got to the other side of the bridge, and the marchers, there were only a couple hundred of them, were attacked by mounted highway patrolmen, Alabama Highway Patrol, on horses, kicking at people, beating them with clubs. John Lewis got his skull fractured there that morning and was hospitalized. And then, of course, the call went out that we got to have a really organized march, something like the March on Washington. Dr. King came, ministers, rabbis, priests came from all over the country. Nurses and doctors joined the march. The Medical Committee for Human Rights set up an office to accompany the march. And about 25,000 people wound up marching from Selma to Montgomery over 5 days. That got a lot of publicity, and that was enough to push Lyndon Johnson, who was then president, to make a dramatic presentation to Congress using the terms, "we shall overcome," Lyndon Johnson saying, "we shall overcome." But he was good on these issues. And Congress passed the act on July 2nd, 1965. Just before the act was passed, we had another little incident of marching, which I always remember with some fondness in a way. In Jackson, Mississippi, the governor of Mississippi, Paul Johnson, declared a special session of the Mississippi legislature the last week of June to try to pass laws to avoid the implications of the Voting Rights Act. They were trying to avoid it even before it was passed. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, who got organized in '64, called for people to come in and protest and march against that. And thousands of people came to Jackson, and there was no one march, but they would picket the state capitol. People were picketing the governor's mansion, marching down the main street in groups with signs, we want the right to vote, and so on. Outside the governor's mansion, there's a famous picture that was taken of a 5-year-old boy by the name of Anthony Quinn, a little African-American boy, who'd been carrying an American flag, and this picture captured this big, burly, typical Mississippi highway patrolman grabbing the flag. Anthony won't let go of it, and his feet are off the ground, and he's being waved in the air, but he won't let go of the flag. And then over here, in the back of the picture, you see Anthony's 8-year-old sister. She was holding a sign that says, "No more police brutality," and it's a highway patrolman has got his arms around her, grabbing her sign. And then the caption underneath in the New York Times says, "5-year-old Anthony Quinn was arrested for picketing without a permit." And 3 hours later, he was released from jail in the custody of his lawyer, Alvin Bronstein, Chief Staff Counsel, Lawyers Counsel. The point of that story is, not to get praise from me, that was the 3rd time that I'd gotten Anthony Quinn out of jail. The time he was 5. His mother, known as Mama Quinn, she had a restaurant and cafe in Macomb, Mississippi, which is the most bombed city in the country in 1964. 39 homes, black churches, Freedom House, the Corps office were all bombed during that summer. Mrs. Quinn's home was bombed. The front room, where Anthony and his sister Jackie slept, the roof came in on them. Anthony now has an automobile dealership in Tampa, Florida, and his sister is teaching at Mississippi College, Southern Mississippi College. Mrs. Quinn passed away about 2 years ago. But these were heroic people marching. It's part of the movement.